Morning. As we get ready to move further into short fiction, I wanted to give you a little bit of a frame of reference as we start to move into longer short fiction. Previously, we've been reading short stories. And as we move into the definition of short fiction, we're also looking at short fiction as novellas or short novels. And so we are now moving into our first novella of the year, a novella called Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka. And it is a very bizarre but very interesting novel. It's a little bit dark, but I think it will bring up some really interesting discussions. And it also is a very good, strong analytical piece. It gives us a good frame of reference as we move into further into our year. So I wanted to give you a slideshow on modernism, which is the ideology of the time. So it sets up a little bit of a time frame for you. It sets up a little bit of historical context. All of that necessary because it does help inform how we read the text. So I've attached a copy of the slideshow for you, and I've made a copy of it so that you can open it up, review it at a little more length, and add additional notes to it as we prepare for the metamorphosis. But I am just giving you really a short overview of those slides as you get ready to look them over, make some notes, and then come back for us to do a little bit of a debrief. So I'm going to hit present mode so you can see the text just a little more clearly. So modernism is an ideology that root word is modern, and at this time, modernism was modern. It's not quite anymore. But modernism is a movement, not just literary. It also is relative to the music and the artwork, etc., of the time period. But it was born out of World War I and lasted roughly until the 1970s when we moved into postmodernism. So what you do want to be aware of with modernism is here we have writers who are attempting to make writing new. They are going to play with writing convention. They're going to move away from what was traditionally seen as strong writing or strong plot structure. And they really are working to try to capture the essence of the life that they were living in and the historical time frame that they were living in and some of the emotions that are born out of that. And so what you will see, and you'll see on the slide characteristics here, that the writers are highly imagistic. They are a little bit emotional. They do write very largely about kind of the futility of life and the idea that sometimes our dreams don't come true, and sometimes we may work as hard as we can and still not find success, which is a little bit depressing to think about, but they were coming out of a very devastating time of life, and their life informed their writing. And again, you will see a lot of experimentation with form. We tend to move away from the strict linear plot diagram that we learned so much about when we were in the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. We start to see more of a stream of consciousness type of narration. We see writing that has a lot more flashbacks and a lot of shifting of narrators and points of view. And again, as we look at some of these texts, we'll kind of take some time to really look at why they're shifting points of view and what the writers are trying to accomplish by moving in a nonlinear, more stream of conscious pattern. Other kind of stylistic markers as you're reading, you do, again, want to be very prepared for very imagistic writing. They rely very heavily on visual imagery, audio imagery. They rely heavily on personification. They are very, very emotional writers. They pull from a deep well of depression or rage or happiness, and they don't shy away from that. You'll see a lot of experimentation with syntax and diction. So as we looked at the yellow wallpaper previously and groups were presenting on the syntax, the structure, the punctuation, that's kind of our bridge as we move into longer narratives that also use a lot of this type of technique in terms of illustrating meaning. The tougher part and the most enjoyable part is that when you're reading modernist text, more demand is placed on you to be an active reader, because there will be flashbacks. There will at times be shifts in narrators. And if you are not actively tracking that as you're reading, you might forget who's speaking, or you might lose track of whose point of view we're sharing. So it's a more real type of writing in the sense that it very much mirrors the way that our brains roll and the way that our conversations roll, but it does require you as a reader to be mindful of that as you're reading. And I think what I see in a lot of notes or annotations are people marking asterisks when narrators change or when we've reached a flashback versus real time. So again, that's just something to have a heads up for. I'm a big fan of audiobooks, the free version, if you can download it on your phone, because it will read to you. And sometimes having things read aloud helps with keeping track of narrators and points of view and timing. Some examples of texts that you may have read or movies, shows that you may have seen. If you read The Joy Luck Club your sophomore year, then you have read a modernist text, and you'll remember that it has something like 8 narrators and bounces back and forth between modern America and China. If you've seen the movie The Butterfly Effect or Memento, that is a very modernist type of movie construction because you're having a lot of flashbacks and shifts there. If you like the comedy show How I Met Your Mother, or you're a fan of Lost, that also has a very modernist feel to it. And actually, if you are a fan of a show like The Umbrella Academy or The Vampire Diaries, or even Buffy the Vampire Slayer, you see modernist technique there with the shift of points of view of the characters, and you see the shifting timelines. So those are some examples of things that you might have already had exposure to in terms of what makes modernist text. And so that is a little bit of an overview, folks, as we head into looking at the metamorphosis. This was just meant to give you kind of a frame of reference as you look at the notes on the slides a little more specifically. As we move into Friday, we're going to take a look at these slides. We're going to throw out a couple of ideas and questions as we get ready to tackle this last piece of our short fiction unit. So again, this is just to give you a little bit of an overview. I hope it helped. And if it brought up some questions, even better, because we can use that to guide our discussion when we're back together after you've seen it. So I hope that you have a great day. Make notes of any questions you need, and I'm looking forward to talking with you. Take care. I'll see you later.